Okay, so today, essentially what the groups will be doing is just touching base on all the things that we've done so far, which are the best starting point for the upcoming assessment, which we will begin properly next week. I'll be talking about it a bit later today, a little bit more. I'll just say that in terms of the plan, normally today we would be looking at 3D space, lights and cameras. I'll say that we will do that down the track when it's much more relevant to the assessments that you're going to do. It's just, we talk about 3D and lights and all this, we're just adding a complex layer that is not relevant to the assessment that we're beginning. Okay? The first assessment is really just a bringing together of all of the things that we've worked on so far with Illustrator and After Effects. Okay? The masks, the trim paths, the animating of text, those sorts of things. Now today, what we're going to do is trim this video and prepare it to bring into After Effects. If you have a video of your own, and you will need a video that you'll shoot for the first assessment, it's just going to be something like this. Just a, I'll just see if I can turn the volume down. Where your video that you've shot is essentially just static. Okay? When I say static, that's standing, well, just fixed, like it would be on a tripod, or like I said last week, holding your phone or your camera with your elbows tucked into your body for stability, standing or sitting in a stable way, or even just propping up your phone or camera with a brick or something so that it is set and you just get a fixed piece of sequence. You will need it for about 20 seconds. So it's always good when you are shooting to shoot more than you need, okay? Not like a minute or 5 minutes, because you're going to be choosing a 20-second window there. But it's good just to trim. So we're going to trim this down, okay? What will also happen is when we are working on this first assessment, we're going to be doing what's called lower thirds. And that is essentially having some text and graphic information that pops up in the lower portion of the frame. Okay? We will talk about it much more, but it doesn't really need to have allowance for this. I mean, with this here, I guess just the way I'm shooting this, or have shot it, the waves sort of end just above where the type would probably go. But if you're sitting on a train, you could actually film out the window passing. Street, cafe, wherever you want to be, as long as you're not shooting in beaches, playgrounds, schoolyards, and places where essentially you get arrested. Okay? You need to be aware. And it is good to, I mean, if you're just shooting, sitting at a cafe, just having people walk past, I think that's okay. all right? Or if you're on a city street or on a suburban street just shooting, you don't have to go up and ask permission, but sometimes it is polite if they are foremost at it, okay? I have been physically threatened taking photos a long time ago in a pub during bands and things like that, where people were assured that I was filming them specifically, but maybe if I just asked, say, hey guys, I'm just shooting crowd shots for this band thing, it might have been okay. I don't think it would have been with this particular person, but anyway, it was all right. Anyway, so this is a raw file. Now, what I'm going to do, so as I said, here is the file here if you want to do use what I'm doing. It doesn't really matter, but if you've got something of your own, then it's always good to, put ownership on all the graphic exercises that you do, because essentially for your portfolios, you'll want that sort of thing to happen. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm opening this program, Media Encoder. Now, it's just in your Adobe Creative Suite. You may probably have used it before. Certainly in my previous classes, I have spoken about it from time to time. It's a pretty good program for converting files to MP4, which is essentially the file format that you will need if you're uploading to YouTube or social media or those sorts of things. But the other thing is that we can actually edit very simply in this way, and so we'll be doing that. So I've just opened up Media Encoder, and depending upon, sometimes I'm looking for this little plus sign. Sometimes I've opened Media Encoder, maybe on previous versions, and it's been on the left-hand side. It's the same thing. So I'm just going to, I can drag and drop, of course. Let's just be a little bit old-fashioned. So I'll just come into my sequence. Where are we? In Studio, down the bottom, Video Grounds. And it's that one here. And I'm bringing it in. Okay, now let's just talk about what we have. Some of these things won't be particularly relevant, but it's good to know. Now, we have what are called codecs. Codec stands for compression decompression, a compressed file format. A JPEG is a compressed file format. That's how the file size is reduced, but what it does is it actually takes out information, usually detail, colour, these sorts of things, just to bring the file size down. You can convert audio files to MP3, which is what we can do. Basically, these other ones I don't really worry about, but this H.264 is a codec that has been developed for MP4 video, okay? MP4 existed before the H.264, but it was essentially developed so that video could play on your mobile devices, your phones and your screens. And before that, it was more of a convoluted process. So H.264, all you need to know. Now here, I'll just cancel that. The match source, we have a whole lot of possibilities. You can see YouTubes and Vimeos and Facebooks and whatnot. We're just going to keep the format, the screen size as is. I could make it into a high bit rate, which is fine. Usually when I'm recording the video tutorials, I just make it a medium one just to make it a little smaller. It really doesn't matter. We'll leave it at high bit rate, that's fine. But also, while we're here, there's some other things that come out. Always keep both of these boxes ticked, even if, and let's just say I made an animation in After Effects and I rendered it as an MOV file, and then I want to make it into an MP4. It might not have any audio, but just keep that box ticked because it, for some reason, messes things up, okay? But down here is where we'll look. Now, with this video, it has actually shot at 1920 by 1080 pixels, okay? If you can't see that, it's fine. If I just untick that, maybe you can. If you're shooting on high-res large screens, it may well be a different pixel dimension, okay? What this is going to do is we can actually crop the image, reduce the size very, very easily. It's sort of like using the crop tool in Photoshop with this, and we can do it to a whole video sequence. So say, for example, I was making a small video and I just wanted it to be, say, 1280 by 720. Same for, oh, notice that I've got the link here. Make sure that's done because it will squash and stretch according to what you do. You don't have squashed video. But we can crop it down to size. So I'll just make that back to 1920, which is what you're doing. That is your thing. Here we've got our frame rates. Now, we've been talking about frames per second, and you know, I have emphasised 25 frames per second, which you would do for this project because that is Australian broadcast standard, okay? That is what television plays at, okay? And it's always good to do that. If you're working internationally, then of course there might be a different frame rate for American television. I'm sure there would be, as there would be for English. Different, I think Japan has the same standard as Australia, but you know, Thailand or Vietnam will have a different standard, okay? The other thing is 25 frames per second is sort of using traditional television frames per second, but also it's very, very close to 24 frames per second, which was cinema. So back in the old days when a cinema projection was a roll of film pushed through a projector, projected onto a screen, it was 24 frames per second. And so when television came out, it wanted to sort of match that, and the closest it could get, because the images are made differently, was 25. Okay, it's close enough. 1/25 of a second is a very small amount. Now, the other thing with that is it's actually quite a good number to work in fractions. Half a second is 12 frames per second. Okay? A quarter of a second is 6 frames per second. Even though 12 and a half is half of 25, there's no such thing as a half a frame. So just 12, 25, 37, 50, 62, 75. Know your times table in that sort of way. It's very handy. Now, those are pretty well the only things we need to worry about here. Don't worry about messing around with the audio or any of the other things here. Back in the days when I was building apps, there was all these advanced settings that I'd be playing with. which I don't understand, but I still don't understand. But that's, just leave it as is. So just test 1920 by 1080, 25 frames per second. Okay, and so to actually do that, I've had to untick the native format of this file. Okay. Now here, and I'll bring this up so we can see. Down the bottom is the scroll bar for this entire sequence. And so I've got 30.19 seconds. Now, what I want to do is I want to make 20 seconds. Okay, now, I could actually bring this in. It's not too bad, but, you know, when I've done things like making music videos and things like that, and I'm trimming things, you know, I'll be shooting a scene and it might be, you know, band playing or whatever happening, and it might be minutes, and I only want a fraction of that for the editing, so I might bring it down to 10 seconds or 5 seconds. Because what happens is when we bring in video into After Effects, even though we're only going to use 20 seconds of this, if we've got 5 minutes of video, that adds to the file size and the processing demands, the rendering demands down the track. And sort of adding all of this along the way will slow down your computer and make the whole experience a very time-consuming thing. So I'll just trim this very simply. So let's just say that and I want to get it from that wave there. So that's going to be my in point. And I've got these two little triangles here. So I'm clicking the first one. So there's my in point. I'm going to trim that front bit off. And so now I'll come through. Now I know that that was 1 second. So 21 seconds, about there, is going to be about 20 seconds. I'll tap that. So, you know, I've got video here of, there we go, a train coming. So I'll give it a few seconds before the train crosses, rather than having 8 seconds of people just going, what's happening? Okay, so I'll trim that, and then I'll get my 20, I want that to go up. I should have left it. This is a thing when you're shooting in your car, you've got cars behind you waiting to cross, so I couldn't really wait as long as I wanted to close this scene off, but good enough. Okay? Okay, so here's my 20 seconds. I'll go OK. And now here's my video. So what I'll do is I'll put this into my folder. So I'll call this video ground. You might call it, if it's for the lower thirds, it might be a lower thirds folder. You're putting everything into a particular folder. I'll call this lower thirds and beach 01. Just in case I need to edit it, O2 comes in. Okay, no, this is the name of the file. Okay, I'll just leave that raw. Good stuff. Then click the green arrow and I'm rendering. Okay? So, you know, when I've been doing music videos and all this sort of thing, sometimes my sequence will take 4 hours to render on this. Okay? Not unheard of with the slower computers. Okay, so that is there. So that's trimming the video. So now if I come to After Effects, and I'll talk about this in a moment, let's just say I'll have a new comp, 1920 by 1080. So that's a preset, HD TV 1080 25. 25 frames per second. Let's just make this 20 seconds. So our magic number shortcut for 20 seconds is 2000. So I'm just going to tap the tab key. Okay. If I go OK, I close this window. Now, because it's going to have a video for the background, it doesn't actually need a background color. So it's not important. Okay. Sometimes it is. If there's just a slight window, I'll try and match the color or make it a black background or whatever. Let's just make this white, 6 Fs. There we go. And now I'll just double click in here. In it comes. And in it goes. Okay? So there's our video. Now, we'll do a couple of things here, just in terms of talking about this. For example, if I'm making a music video in this, I've got a whole lot of video clips building it up. With a music video, generally speaking, you've got an audio track, which is the song, okay? But all the other video has audio in it. So you can actually turn the audio off by clicking that speaker. And so with all my video, there are a couple, I did one and I did the final render, went up YouTube, and there was just like a 1 second where I did it at the last minute and it had audio and it was then brought into the whole music video, which I then had to take down, redo, put it back up, but all blah, blah, blah. And so there is our video. So this is called Comp 3. If by chance I wanted to be a little bit more organised, I might change this to the beach, okay? So here's my video, no audio. I don't actually have to do anything here. If I was editing audio, I can actually come down to here and edit audio levels if I needed to, okay? Same thing, okay? I'm not going to worry about that, but just so that you know for later. It's just video, one flattened image, so we have our basic animation properties. I could put this in a mask, in a television set, and make it look like it's on a TV, match it. I could change it, alter it, play with it, all those things. We'll deal with that down the track. But we're just playing with a basic video ground, okay? 1920, 1080, 25 frames per second, filling the screen, okay? Now, to actually render this, which I'll do in a moment, I do this. File, export, add to render queue. So I'll do that in a moment, okay? But while I'm here, I'm just going to talk about a thing that we can do, which is time remapping. And I think I might have just demonstrated this a little bit maybe last week with a sequence where I can slow down or speed up something. Okay, I can make something slow motion. Actually, having said that, I'm not sure if you know how slow motion works. I know you know that slow motion is it's just playing slow. But to do slow motion, you generally have to video at a much higher frame rate. So if you've ever seen a photograph or a video of an arrow popping a balloon and the balloon full of water exploding. For that to happen at slow motion, each frame has to be very, very, very short and precise, so there's no blurring. So it is not unusual in those circumstances to be shooting at something like 3,000 frames per second. And that way, when you slow it down, it will play. So just be aware, if you are going to slow things down, you know, maybe 60 frames per second is something that you might use. It'll be fine if we're just slowing this down a little bit here. Okay, I'd probably leave it at 29, knowing that it's going to come down, but just be aware, do a test. Slow motion, if you're going to slow motion, you generally need a higher frame rate for that to work. Now, here, there's a number of things that we will be talking about in the timeline right click or control click down the track. But here what we're doing is time and time stretch. You'll notice here that we can actually do a freeze frame as well. If we wanted it to stop at a point. I won't worry about that now. It's a little bit more, well, not so much complicated, but if we're going to do a video then freeze frame, then generally we actually shoot the video, then have it duplicated on a different layer. And so one layer will be playing at normal, and then we'll use another layer for the freeze frame, and we'll just edit it so that as one ends, the freeze frame starts. Again, I'll talk about that down the track. So we've got our time stretch, and if I want this to be slow motion, then I increase the percentage. So anything that comes in is 100%. If I want to slow it down to half the speed, I would make it 200%. Okay? If I wanted to speed it up to half the speed, I'd make it 50%. Okay, so under 50%, under 100, we'll speed up. Okay, so this is now a 40-second sequence. It's okay because the composition is only going to render 20 seconds, okay? So even though I've actually got another 20 seconds outside this comp, the comp is what's going to render. So it's really important when you do your sequences that you make your comp settings the length that you want your sequence to be, okay? It's very easy to have something end and then just have 5 seconds of white or black or whatever the colour of the frame is while it's rendering. So set your time at what you want it to be the final, okay? So let's just have a look at this. Depending upon the capabilities, we've now changed the video, and so the processing is actually going to be working to slow this down. This is where the processing capabilities of your computer start to be having demands made of them. Okay, so just tap. If that was shot at a really, really high frame rate and slowed down, it would look so much better, but that's okay. All right, so there we go. We can do that. I'll undo that, but you get the idea. Okay. So let's just tidy this up. I'm going to do another demonstration with changing the video very shortly, turning it black and white, that sort of thing. It's not the most important thing for this exercise, but maybe if we've got time, we'll do it. But just to render this off, Of course here, I'm going to have type layers, graphic layers on top of the video. So it's all together. The video is the ground, the background. Everything else is going to happen on the top of it, okay? Add to render queue. Now, I'll just say do this. Even though we could add to the media encoder queue and go straight over to media encoder, that will, if we've got lots of layers with lots of effects and lots of things, that is going to slow down media encoder rendering, okay? So we'll render this, so it's a nice flattened MP4, take that MP4 into media encoder, trim it down there, or make it into an MP4 there. Okay, render queue. So you'll note that we've now got a new window. So here's that video comp. Here's the render queue. Okay, so last week we were talking about comps within comps. Do that later. So here, best settings, we're going to leave all of this, okay? We're making it a high quality video. From time to time, down the track, not in this class, you may come in and alter your render settings and that sort of thing. Just leave this as a high quality video, and then we'll do all the changing elsewhere. But we don't need to worry about our outputs, all this sort of thing. But over here, we do. So this is where we actually name the file. So if this is the name of the video file or comp1, it's your opportunity to change it. Okay, it will be a .mov. If you're doing this on a PC computer, it will be a .avi. Okay, it's a high quality rendered video file. I'll put this into my video grounds. If I wanted to, I actually have that folder in my shortcuts. Save. Okay, so I've saved it, but I haven't rendered it. Okay? I've just saved it, ready to go. Now, what I'll now do is hit way over the right-hand side, hit the magic render button, and depending on the processing capabilities of your computer, depending on all the effects and things that you put onto the files, all the layers that you have, this can take a short amount of time, or I've had rendering 5-6 hours. Okay, I have had that happen. Okay, so now what we have is our new MP4. So here we go. This video, the raw one, was 23 megabytes. This QuickTime movie is now 297. I've made it shorter, it's just coming through, but that's a thing, okay? We won't worry about that. Of course, this would also have had all the video, like the type and the animation when we're doing this. We generally wouldn't render a video that we've just trimmed in media encoder, but I'm just talking about the rendering. And then I'll then open this up, have a look at it in QuickTime. There's our video. Okay. So What that is, well, let's just say maybe I need to come back here. Maybe I need to bring my beach video back in, even though I would not do this because I'm reducing the quality that I've already reduced the quality. Open up, I'll just leave it as is, render it. So here's the MP4, and this is now 26 megabytes. Okay, so it's gone from 297 to 26. So again, why we use Media Encoder. Okay, so what we have there is just a little demo for preparing video for your sequences that you're going to use. Okay, down the track you'll be doing an exercise where you might have lots of different video going in After Effects. You'll have lots of different video layers with things happening which we need to render again, but that in a nutshell is what you will be doing for the first assessment, which will be beginning properly next week. Okay?